Hello, I'm Charlie Brooker and you're watching Newswipe, a programme all about what's been happening, like this. Brown smear apology. He's now so unpopular even bystanders don't want to be caught near him. Banal footage of frumpy singing woman astounds imbeciles worldwide. And best budget ever! Or worst, depending on what happened after we recorded the voiceover. But first, well, look, we were always scheduled to do 5 regular episodes of this programme and 1 best-of compilation at the end. Due to us having limited resources and stretching everything and everyone to breaking point to get things like the G20 protests in last week, and some circumstances beyond our control, which you can probably guess at, we've had to swap the last 2 episodes around, so we're doing our final regular episode next week. This week, it's our best-of compilation show full of classic moments, which you're going to love. Starting with this classic moment, it's me standing in a factory full of dummies. It might sound like an odd statement, but the relationship between the news and what I like to think of as real people has shifted somewhat throughout the years.
Over to the newsroom.
Not so long ago, the news basically consisted of a bloke at a desk telling you, the viewer, what had happened that day, with the help of some reporters, some cheap graphics, and an irritating weatherman. Real people, i.e. us common or garden shoe-wearing schlubs, didn't get much of a look in, except, of course, if we'd witnessed something important.
She told me what happened after the first explosion.
And the second bomb didn't go off for a good 10 minutes after that.
But in the late 70s and early 80s, this began to change and real people started to have more input. The concept of the public having their say hit a peak in 1983 when housewife Diane Gould famously put the boot into Mrs Thatcher live on Nationwide's On the Spot segment.
Mrs Thatcher, why, when the Belgrano, the Argentinian battleship, was outside the exclusion zone and actually sailing away from the Falklands, why did you give the orders to sink it?
But it was not sailing away from the Falklands. It was in an area which was a danger to our ships.
Mrs Thatcher, I am saying that nobody with any imagination can put it sailing other than away from the Falklands.
I'm sorry, I forgot your name.
It's Mrs Comeuppance.
It was in an area which was a danger to our ships.
Well,
now, you accept that, do you?
No.
It was proof that real people's questioning of the facts could move the story forward for the journalists, so from this point on, their opinions were solicited more frequently, whether they were interesting or not.
I think a pound note has got more value than a pound coin.
I prefer the railway logbook. I don't know how they've come with coach this time.
That situation changed with the death of Princess Diana in 1997. Here, the public's emotional reaction became the central focus of the story itself. It started out as shock and sorrow.
The outpouring of emotion just grows by the day. What had begun as a sea of flowers has now turned into an ocean.
Before mutating into anger.
Queen's not in residence today, but where the hell is the flag? Eh? You see what I'm saying about the establishment?
And it eventually altered the events themselves.
This afternoon provided the focal point the crowds had been demanding. Their sudden appearance on the Mall, just one of a series of fast-moving changes in which Buckingham Palace repeatedly bowed to the wishes of the people.
Well, I'm glad she's listened to, obviously, to the media, isn't she, and to the people.
Afterwards, the news was terribly pleased with itself for reflecting the feeling of the nation, for being so wonderfully inclusive, which is odd because the entire saga left me, and I suspect millions of other people like me, feeling weirdly alienated. Because I wasn't an anguished mourner. Diana's death didn't make me happy, but it didn't move me to come down to the palace and demand to see the Queen weeping on the pavement either. Inadvertently, what the news was doing was driving a wedge between regular people and emotional, demonstrative, and some might say overreactive people. And ever since Di's death, it's been this second group that's had more influence over the news agenda. That's why stories such as this angry ITN news piece on the Baby P report often lead on the emotional public outcry.
Baby P's grave is still surrounded by the thought and care he never had in life. No one was there to help you, reads this card.
In effect, the journalist and the public have swapped places. Instead of offering us a factual summary of events that we can then form an emotional opinion on, they're asking us for our emotional opinion and then incorporating it into their factual summary of events. Anyway, opinions and emotions are one thing, pictures are another. The 2004 tsunami was a decisive moment for user content. Most of these terrifying clips had been gathered by traditional news agencies, which in turn sold them onto TV networks who ran them again and again and again. It was so exciting that the BBC set up a dedicated user-generated content department aimed at harvesting footage directly from the viewers. Shortly afterwards, 7/7 happened, and harrowing pictures sent in by those caught up in the attacks quickly made it directly onto the screen. People shot hours of footage. Now, of course, I can completely understand why you'd want to look through a viewfinder if you found yourself caught up in the middle of something like this. Seeing it all through a lens would somehow disconnect you from the misery of what was happening and make it seem less real. At least that's why I do it whenever I get caught up in a bloody argument in a bloody relationship.
You're doing absolutely nothing. I mean, do you even care about me? Have you ever loved me?
A few months after 7/7, another citizen journalism spectacular occurred as the Buncefield oil depot went up like an exploding oil depot.
Minutes after the first explosions, two young men took a video camera to within 50 metres of the fires. They defied official advice to keep away.
Yes, helpfully illustrating one of the potential pitfalls of citizen journalism, two amateur filmmakers raced towards the inferno with their lenses on. Aside from recklessly dumb visual observation, we also got to enjoy recklessly dumb vocal observation. As one of them said, it wasn't a fire, but actually Satan coming to Earth in the form of oil.
It is actually Satan coming to Earth in the form of oil.
See?
Imagine we were sitting right here when it went, and it did that to those buildings.
Yeah, I imagine we'd be dead.
Yeah, well, good job there aren't any oil tanks left to explode, yeah?
At one point, their camera zooms in on an oil tank yet to explode.
Well, this should be good. I hope they stick around.
We've got to make a move now because they're expecting another explosion. If there is another explosion, we're going to die.
Oh, come back. I was enjoying that, you chicken.
Their pictures are another example of the growing public involvement in the recording of major news events. They knew it was dangerous, but say their filming instincts took over from personal fear.
Still, at least the Buncefield footage was spectacular because it was a massive explosion and not, say, a bit of snow. Now, about 20 years ago, the news used to cover heavy snowfall like this. Moira Stewart, dressed in a straitjacket, barking a load of basic information about which trains weren't running.
And services to Sheffield and Newcastle are also disrupted.
And a few sternly voiced VT reports telling you what to do.
Emergency services have repeated their advice for people to stay inside, wrap up warm and not to venture out unless it's absolutely necessary.
Fast forward to earlier this year and a cold snap has suddenly become a chance to turn the news into a cuddly-wuddly multimedia slideshow. Eventually, the sheer amount of user-generated content they'd received became a self-congratulatory story in itself.
35,000 pictures the BBC yesterday received of the weather, an absolutely amazing response, our biggest ever response.
Well, who'd have thought a national weather condition would have generated that many pictures?
35,000 in one day, we just couldn't believe it.
How do you wade through all those pictures like that?
Yeah, how and why?
I think these pictures we're just looking at now, I mean, they're beautifully shot.
Still, it was fun to hear Bill Turnbull getting a bit Alan Partridge about some of the more jackassy clips.
Look at that, look at that.
That is dangerous. That really I would not recommend at all. It's probably illegal and it's not something to do.
I don't know, maybe I'm mean-spirited, but when I see all these zany photos sent in by zany members of the public, I just want to run out into the street and start kicking people in the neck. Your snowman pictures, don't send them into the news. You know why? Because they're not news, they're snowman pictures. If the snowman's learned to talk or he's hanging Saddam Hussein, that's news. This is what news looks like, and this is what a snowman looks like. Can you see the difference? And you know what? Paxman agrees with me.
In the meantime, it's all available again on the website, along with our editor's pathetic pleas for you to send some of us your old bits of home movie and the like, so we can become the BBC's version of Animals Do the Funniest Things. Good night.
Ah, that's them told, yeah. Ha! Now, in our third week, we took a look at American news commentators who were mad people, basically, like this. The fair and balanced opinion slingers of dystopian future sci-fi satirical shouty porn sledgehammer channel Fox News are the craziest people you ever did see. Fox generally leans more to the right than a man who's just had his right leg blown off, and now Obama's in the White House, their commentators are getting to play the underdog at last.
If you believe this country is great, but nobody is fighting for you, let me tell you something. You don't need any guns for this revolution. You just need to stand up and find your voice. Come on, follow me.
Although it's a curious kind of underdoggery where they complain about liberal bias in the media one moment and then brag about their cable dominance the next. Now, to a dumb foreigner like me, all the Fox anchors look like characters in some 80s frat house comedy.
Oh, wait, dear.
For instance, Sean Hannity here would be cast as the uptight jock bully. Witness his cold ink-dot eyes, which could have been surgically transplanted from a particularly characterless dormouse, and his whiny, peevish demeanour.
We can't say enemy combatant. We can't say terrorist. We'll get to those things in a second. Now we're not going to use the term illegal immigrant?
The disapproving high school principal would have to be Bill O'Reilly, moralising about permissive society one minute.
The Woodstock generation thought it was cool to get stoned.
And chortling about lady bumps the next.
Their pitch is beach-friendly, if you know what I mean, and we believe they are patriots.
When there's no tits to dribble over, Bill kills time by boasting about his ratings.
Judging from our enormous ratings, I think we've been successful in doing that.
Or plugging his myriad books.
I do want to thank you all for keeping Bold fresh on the bestseller list for more than 6 months.
Or simply sitting there pulling a face like a tortoise that's learned to enjoy the stink of its own farts. But his primary characteristic is anger. Bill gets wound up by virtually anything to the left of Mussolini, hectoring and yowling like a wolf that's got his nuts caught on a coat hanger.
See, I'm more angry about it than you are.
So what about George Bush?
What about George Bush? You had nothing to do with it.
Still, if you think Bill O'Reilly's outrageous, you haven't seen anything yet. This is recent Fox signing Glenn Beck, who at first glance looks like a welcoming, happy kind of chap. He effectively presents his commentary show in the style of a wacky neighbour from a bad sitcom. Although, actually, rather than a sitcom, this is more like an out-and-out variety show, replete with zany chuckles.
You think that ain't gonna happen?
Table-thumping conservative rhetoric.
I think this makes a good case to shoot people on the battlefield. Well, you got these guys. We can't keep them in prison because they're not technically terrorists, but they were in terrorist training camps. Were they fighting against us?
Well, they were in a terrorist training camp.
Yeah, I mean, we go in, you shoot them then.
And toe-tapping patriotic country music.
When I see people on my TV taking shots at Uncle Sam, I hope they always remember why they can. Because we'd all be speaking German or living under the flag of Japan if it wasn't for the good Lord and the man.
Anyway, so far you're probably thinking, okay, it's extremely right-wing, but it's fairly sane. Yes, because Beck isn't just the face of news, he's a bona fide social crusader who started his own post-apocalyptic sounding 9/12 project aimed at bringing the nation together in a spirit of unity and hope and something and stuff.
This is the 9/12 Project. Are you ready to be that person that you were that day after 9/11 on 9/12? I told you for weeks, you're not alone.
Now, I don't know if you've seen the superb and prophetic movie Network, in which Peter Finch played a news anchor who loses his mind and becomes a ranting, raving, rating smash after sinister bosses leave him on air.
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!
This is basically like that, but crazier, and starring Paul Giamatti in a blonde wig.
The real power to change America's course still resides with you. You are the secret. You're the answer. I'm sorry. I just love my country, and I fear for it. And it seems like the voices of our leaders and special interests and the media, they're surrounding us. It sounds intimidating.
Or mental.
The truth is, they don't surround us. We surround them. This is our country.
And now the weather from a talking oven glove with a face on it. Hello. Yeah, Glenn Beck might cry on air, but does he appear in a neck brace laughing nihilistically at all the torment in the world like this? Ha 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 ha! No. Anyway, the recession, or money-geddon as we like to call it, has remained top of the news agenda all the time we've been on air. It's involved a lot of tricky concepts the news has had to try and explain to us. Here's how they dealt with quantitative easing. Every day there's been baffling new terminology to learn, with the latest being quantitative easing, the Bank of England's recent attempt to stop the economy tumbling into a great big bin full of bums. Now, unless you speak fluent jargon, it's not immediately clear what quantitative easing actually is. In fact, as Newsnight found out when they hit the streets to ask human beings, even Brainiac Moss from the IT crowd doesn't know what it is.
the easing of quantitativeness.
Thank God then that the news is on hand to describe exactly what quantitative easing is in easy-to-follow metaphorical steps.
Put simply, quantitative easing is a tool for fixing a blockage in an economy that isn't running smoothly.
There you go, it's a sort of spanner, made of money.
But how does it work?
Well, I suppose you twist it into the stock market.
It's like creating money out of thin air or filling up a petrol tank with imaginary petrol. That is what most economists agree is needed to get any recovery started.
Oh, God, he isn't making any sense. What I need is someone who can't help but speak in profoundly simple terms.
Hello, welcome to 5 News. I'm Natasha Kaplinsky.
I'm preemptively chuckling because I reckon she's about to tell us it's designed to encourage the banks and us to get lending and spending.
It is designed to encourage the banks and us to get lending and spending. Our chief correspondent, John Samuels, investigates whether these measures will help an economy that's been going off the rails.
Why, Natasha, that almost sounds like a cue for a bad railway metaphor.
The economy at the moment seems to be like a runaway train.
Great, all right, let's see you run with this one.
The government's been pulling lots of levers behind the scenes to try and slow down the economic crisis, but it's got to such a stage now that they're trying a different track.
Just tell me how it works.
It's called quantitative easing. The idea is to pump more money into the economy and get banks lending again.
Toot toot, the economy's made of trains.
We once had a model economy. The government hopes the latest measures will mean we soon see light at the end of the tunnel.
Now, far be it from me to want to fart in your sleeping bag or anything, but statistically speaking, it's quite likely that some of you watching the programme this evening will at some point in your lives die. But famous people die too, if that's any consolation, and the news doesn't always know how to cope with it when that happens. Here's an excerpt from a piece we did on the death of Jade Goody. The coverage of Jade Goody's death was hardly about death or Jade at all. Instead, it was about the news media having a collective self-perpetuating bun fight. Take the tabloid papers, which, having hurled buckets of misogynist abuse or eye-swivelling rage over Jade for years, suddenly had to perform a U-turn so huge it was visible from space and start gushing with cliched tabloid speak about inspiring bravery. It was almost as though the press felt guilty for treating her badly in the past, although, of course, the press doesn't feel anything, it just wants to sell more papers. That's why they willingly put her on the front cover as often as possible, veering into astronomical bad taste in a way that would simply alarm other cancer sufferers. And when they didn't have a photo, they simply made one up. Take this astonishing Daily Star front page from the 18th of February, which, as Private Eye pointed out, is actually a Photoshop version of this more jubilant photograph taken a year ago when Jade still had hair. It's amazing to think somebody actually did that. Somebody actually sat there, spending hours photoshopping out that hair, giving Jade retrospective cancer to sell their paper. And to think the press has the temerity to moan whenever TV gets accused of faking things. What twats. Speaking of things that want photoshopping, look at Peter Cushing here, aka Carol Malone. Here's someone who had to change her tune quicker than an iPod shuffle. Having berated Jade for 200 years in her shit and nasty newspaper columns, suddenly she was conducting sympathetic interviews with her before taking to the newsstands on March the 8th to say it was time to turn the cameras off Jade, asking, is it just me who's starting to feel like the spectre at the feast? Although I think she meant look, not feel. Luckily for Carol, before they turned the cameras off, she had time to appear in a mawkish ITV Tonight special the very next night.
She made headlines without thinking, and she was perfect.
Of course, the tabloids weren't the only ones jammed full of Jade. No, the self-appointed quality press got in on the act too. They ran plenty of chin-stroking, what does it all mean pieces on the cultural meaning of Jade's suffering. There was a lot of woe-betided intellectual masturbation which sometimes veered over into outright snobbery, such as in Rod Little's bizarre, venomous article for The Spectator. You know, I've tried to think of something clever to say about Rod Little, but he just comes across as a c***. Throughout the depressing blanket coverage, Jade was repeatedly referred to as a star of reality TV, which she was, although it's more accurate to say she was a star of reality TV and news. After all, in her final weeks, taken accumulatively, she made far more appearances on front pages and news broadcasts than in her living TV specials.
Sally, what's the latest that you've been able to discover about Jade's condition?
The populist news broadcast had exciting live updates, filling us in on each fresh development as and when it happened, often displaying characteristic tact.
We were also hearing that perhaps the cancer has spread to her brain. What's the latest on that, Rachel?
They also repeatedly looped footage of her being wheeled to an ambulance, footage with a cheery watermark in the top right corner, marking it the property of Mr. Paparazzi, the brainchild of fatuous Mel Smith lookalike and almighty human arse-cheek Darren Lyons, seen here on Sky News, giddily commenting on a comment on the sort of press coverage he's a part of.
It's a superb read, and I would love everyone to have a look at this today.
And which I'm now commenting on. This whole thing is a crazy, endless feedback loop. Of course, when the sad news actually arrived, it was broken dramatically live, and we were treated to real-time spooling footage from outside her house, which we were told was a perfectly acceptable thing to do.
This is not any kind of intrusion.
This was followed by emotive coverage of well-wishers leaving flowers.
It has, in this corner of Essex, been a sombre Mother's Day.
And the occasional talking head overstating her good points to a frankly embarrassing degree.
I think for people she's become a saint, a princess, an exemplar of biblical proportions.
Yeah, she's the patron saint of celebrity perfume ranges. None of it seemed real, not the gaudy tabloid front pages, not the garish ads for tribute magazines published before she'd even died.
OK Magazine's special tribute issue with wonderful memories of Jade, out now.
Not the tributes from establishment figures who, let's be fair, were only answering questions they'd been asked by the press. In the end, Jade Goody died on the biggest reality show going, not Big Brother or some living TV special, but The News. After all, with its jaunty titles and its easy hate figures, its selective storytelling and its stupid viewer votes, it's a hair's breadth from being a multi-platform I'm a Celebrity spin-off. In fact, all it needs next is a special live edition where Gordon Brown has to eat a Wichity grub or something to win the next election, and then the circle's complete. And then just before the world ends, we can all enjoy a quick look back at some of our best bits. You know, when I started doing this series, I thought, hey, this will be a good self-improvement exercise. I'll watch loads of broadcasts and I'll know what's going on in the world. But all it's done, actually, is depress me because the news is so flippin' horrible.
We believe, from what the police officer was telling us, that he killed his 74-year-old grandmother, also his mother, his uncle, his cousin, his 15-year-old second cousin. In addition, he killed a baby, he killed a sheriff deputy's wife, he killed 2 pedestrians, he killed a petrol station assistant, he killed a motorist, he let loose 7 rounds at a trooper, he shot the chief of police, and he shot himself. I will let you digest that for a moment.
Which isn't to say the world itself is horrible. I mean, it's still full of sunshine and flowers and cuddly creatures you'd like to have sex with, like this rabbit. Oh, look at that rabbit. Anyway, I guess what I'm saying is there's generally more good than bad in the world, unless you're watching the news, which likes to accentuate the negative at every turn. For instance, a few weeks ago at a homecoming parade for our boys, a small group of 15 to 20 Islamist protesters kicked up a stink by wobbling a load of antagonistic placards around and loudly decrying Western imperialism from behind a line of Western imperialists defending their right to shout about the system that was permitting them to shout, if you see what I mean. Predictably, the protest outraged some well-wishers so much things quickly turned ugly. Before long, 2 people were arrested, one for climbing on top of a supermarket and throwing a packet of bacon at the protesters. So a tiny minority of another minority tried to stir up some outrage, and there's 2 arrests. Not a huge deal. Except the news thought differently, of course. To the news, it was a huge deal. It provided dramatic material for news bulletins, fantastic emotive copy for populist tabloid headlines, and a great starting point for countless hours of confused debate on shows like Banal Morning, Guff Storm, The Right Stuff.
Steve, what's your feelings on this?
Well, I totally think it's bad that they tried to protest and basically...
And shorter bursts of simplistic yes-no debate on decisive Sky News.
Hello? Yes, I think probably... Hello?
Meanwhile, radical cleric Anjem Chowdhury, who heads the group that arranged the protest, was all over cosy GMTV, enjoying the publicity and their comfy sofa.
And the reality is, you see, that if we had this demonstration at another time, when the parade was not taking place, it probably wouldn't have got the coverage that it's got, and I wouldn't be here now talking about it on your programme.
You've certainly got us all going this morning. There's been a lot of dialogue, and dialogue has to be considered a good thing, I guess. Thank you very much.
It's good that you can come and talk to us about it.
Yes, thanks, Anjem. Now, would you like an infidel biscuit? They're lovely. There was also another parade scheduled to take place that day, which the news excitedly cut to. But wouldn't you know it, when the moment of truth came, the Watford March passed off without incident, and the news was left without the story.
Parades. Let's have a listen to see what's going on down there in Watford.
No, nobody shouting baby killers. This is boring. Fuck it. Still, while there wasn't even the tiniest protest in Watford, there was a huge protest taking place in Northern Ireland, where thousands of demonstrators were taking to the streets in the name of peace. Yes, that's thousands of protesters coming together to demonstrate against the recent upsurge in Republican violence. So surely if 15 to 20 protesters in Luton gets a lot of coverage, surely thousands of protesters in Northern Ireland is going to get even more, right? Wrong.
Tonight at 10, a mass shooting at a school in Germany leaves 16 people dead.
Yes, because on the same day as the peace demonstration, a lone maniac in Germany went berserk with a gun, killing 16 people. This senseless tragedy provided material for news reports for days to follow. First, there were the initial dramatic breakdowns detailing precisely how the carnage unfolded. There was grim, voyeuristic mobile phone footage of the gunman's last moments, and a chilling reconstruction of a warning he apparently posted on the internet.
He typed these words: "Everybody's laughing at me. No one sees my potential. I'm serious."
Which later turned out to be almost certainly false, incidentally. The aftermath in Vinenden proved so compelling for the vulture-like rolling news stations they even filled airtime showing things that weren't happening yet. 2 days later, even footage from an old ping-pong tournament in which the back of the gunman's head was vaguely visible was still considered news.
The latest pictures of Kretschmer show him playing table tennis, his favourite sport.
And 3 days later, even worse footage, pixelated to the point where it looked like a broadcast from the Lego dimension, well, that was considered news too.
In the video, Kretschmer is shown taking part in an arm wrestling contest in Rottenburg last year.
Yeah, I think if I squint, I can just about make out the face of a killer. Isn't the news brilliant? Repeatedly showing us a killer's face isn't news, it's just rubbernecking. And what's more, this sort of coverage only serves to turn this murdering little twat into a sort of nihilistic pin-up boy. One thing the news kept plaintively asking was why this had happened.
Why? What had triggered in the mind of a seemingly normal teenager such fury and alienation?
Well, if you want to know why not ask a forensic psychiatrist?
We've had 20 years of mass murders, throughout which I have repeatedly told CNN and our other media, if you don't want to propagate more mass murders, don't start the story with sirens blaring.
The school day had only just begun when the attacker struck.
Don't have photographs of the killer.
The 17-year-old's 3-hour rampage ended in his own death.
Don't make this 24/7 coverage.
The German Chancellor is about to give her reaction. We'll bring that to you live.
Do everything you can not to make the body count the lead story.
Carnage in the classroom, 16 people are dead.
Not to make the killer some kind of anti-hero.
Dressed in black combat gear, the gunman opened fire at random.
Do localize this story to the affected community and make it as boring as possible in every other market. Because every time we have intense saturation coverage of a mass murder, we expect to see one or two more within a week.
But I mean, hold on a second here.
In summary then, not only does bad news always trump good news, but that bad news might itself actually help create more bad news, which is good news if you're the news. Jesus Christ. Anyway, that's the end of this special compilation show, which was scheduled for next week. Instead, next week we've got a whole brand new episode. That is a treat. Yes, that's good, isn't it? Until then, that's all we've got time for. Go away.
And Charlie's back with another brand new episode of Newswipe next Wednesday at 10:30. Next tonight here on BBC4, Marcus Brigstock puts Nigel Haver's mettle to the test in I've Never Seen Star Wars.